Welcome to kindness in real life. High above Manhattan's glittering skyline, billionaire Ethan Carrington is forced into a cold, calculated contract marriage to salvage his empire. But in the process, he begins to discover that even the most ruthless power can crack under the weight of genuine human connection. Let's begin this unforgettable story together. Ethan Carrington leaned against the glass wall of his penthouse office, the sprawling Manhattan skyline stretching beneath him like a glittering tapestry of opportunity and conquest. From this lofty height, the city shimmered, a jewel set against the dark canvas of night, its skyscrapers piercing the heavens with relentless ambition. Yet, tonight, Ethan wasn't admiring the view. His steel-gray eyes were fixed on his own reflection in the smooth glass, a reflection that revealed the hardened lines of his jaw and an expression that had seen too many victories and betrayals. At 37, he was the epitome of self-made success, a billionaire whose name graced headlines, whose face adorned magazine covers, and whose influence dominated every boardroom in the city. But as he stood there, the accolades felt hollow, and the polished veneer of his empire concealed cracks that wealth and power alone could not mend. On the immaculate surface of his desk lay a single folder marked "Confidential" in bold letters, a stark reminder of the crisis that now threatened to unravel everything he had built. The results of the recent board meeting were enclosed within, and as Ethan opened the folder, his eyes scanned the damning figures and projections. The merger he had painstakingly negotiated for months, intended to cement Carrington Industries as a global powerhouse, now hung by a fragile thread. The board's demands were clear: stability, control, and a personal life that mirrored the unwavering image investors expected from their leader. And there lay his problem: Ethan's private life had become a liability. The fallout from his high-profile divorce, an event splashed across tabloids as the tragic end of a power couple, had not only shattered his personal world, but had ignited a corporate crisis. Rumors swirled about the scandal, whispers of betrayal involving his ex-wife Adrienne Hartford and her affair with his bitter rival, James Hartford. It wasn't just the collapse of his marriage that stung. It was the calculated act of corporate espionage that had accompanied it. His board, desperate to salvage the company's reputation, had forced his hand. To project an image of steadfast stability, they insisted on a public display of personal order, a contract marriage. The concept was as ruthless as it was logical in this cutthroat world of business. With his empire teetering on the brink of scandal, Ethan had no choice but to agree to a union that was purely transactional, a strategic move to silence the critics and restore investor confidence. It was not a union born of passion, but a merger of necessity. That morning, in a sleek conference room high above the city's relentless pulse, Ethan met Lily Everett for the first time. Lily was a brilliant financial analyst whose rise from humble beginnings had earned her respect in an industry dominated by privilege and polished pedigrees. Her reputation for incisive analysis and unwavering integrity had already caught the attention of Carrington Industries' board, and now it had caught Ethan's as well. Dressed in a tailored navy blazer and impeccably pressed trousers, Lily's presence was unassuming yet formidable. As she presented her latest analysis on the company's financial vulnerabilities, her voice was steady and clear, slicing through the tension of the boardroom like a scalpel. Every word she spoke resonated with a quiet confidence that belied her modest origins. Ethan found himself both impressed and unsettled by the precision of her insights, a reminder that genuine talent could emerge from even the most unexpected places. After the meeting, as the echoes of her presentation faded into the hushed corridors, Ethan lingered by the conference room's entrance. His mind raced with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, he had always measured success by power and control, believing that every decision must be calculated and unemotional. On the other, Lily's passion for the truth stirred something long dormant within him, a spark of vulnerability that he had fought so hard to suppress. It was a dangerous contradiction for a man who had built his empire on certainty. Back in his penthouse, The quiet luxury of the office offered no refuge from the storm raging inside him. He poured himself a glass of scotch from an ornate crystal decanter, the amber liquid catching the light as he swirled it slowly. "You're becoming a cliché," he muttered under his breath, a bitter, self-directed irony. For years, he had believed that relentless ambition and ruthless pragmatism would shield him from pain. Yet tonight, the loneliness of his triumph was palpable. His empire, for all its splendor, had erected walls around him so high that even success felt empty. The board's latest ultimatum echoed in his mind. With his personal life in ruins and his corporate image under siege, the only solution was to play the game by their rules. Marriage, a contract marriage, nothing more. A spouse on paper, chosen with the same cold precision he applied to every business deal. It was a bitter pill to swallow, yet the logic was undeniable. Investors demanded a stable figurehead, a man whose private life mirrored the unassailable strength of his public persona. Ethan's eyes drifted back to his reflection in the glass, and for a brief, disconcerting moment, he wondered, was this truly the price of power? In the solitude of his penthouse, surrounded by the tangible symbols of his success, the thought was almost laughable. And yet, it was real, a nagging doubt that whispered of sacrifices made at the altar of ambition. As midnight approached, his phone buzzed. A message from Margaret, his ever-efficient assistant. "Board proposal draft complete. Urgent review needed." He sighed, his jaw tightening as he set the phone aside. Tomorrow, he would begin the search for a woman willing to step into this role. A partner in name only, bound by contract and obligation, with no room for real emotion. But deep down, amidst the cold calculations of corporate strategy, a flicker of something unexpected began to stir. Perhaps this arrangement, as devoid of romance as it was, might yet force him to confront the human cost of his choices. Across town, in a modest Brooklyn apartment, Lily was already awake. Her morning had begun not with the luxury of a penthouse view, but with the determination forged from years of hard work and resilience. As she sipped her coffee in a small, sunlit kitchen, she reviewed the email that had just arrived, a formal invitation from Carrington Industries, requesting her presence at a meeting to discuss an urgent business proposition. The subject line read, "Contract Marriage Proposal." Her heart skipped a beat. In that moment, the world of high finance and corporate intrigue collided with her own humble reality. Lily knew all too well the price of ambition in a world where every move was scrutinized and every word dissected. The idea of a marriage arranged purely to stabilize a crumbling empire was as absurd as it was pragmatic, a transaction wrapped in legalese and public relations spin. Yet, despite her initial shock, a part of her recognized the opportunity hidden within the proposal. Here was a chance to prove herself on a stage few from her background had ever set foot on, a chance to shape her destiny by stepping into the spotlight. As she prepared for the meeting, carefully selecting a tailored suit that balanced professionalism with a hint of her own unyielding spirit, Lily's mind swirled with questions. What would it mean to be part of a union that was nothing more than a strategic maneuver? Could she navigate the labyrinth of Carrington Industries without compromising the integrity that had carried her this far? And most importantly, what price would she have to pay in the currency of her heart? Thus, as the city of Manhattan pulsed with its relentless energy outside her modest apartment, both Ethan and Lily found themselves on the brink of an irreversible transformation. Their paths, forged by necessity and bound by the cold terms of a contract, were about to converge in a way that would forever alter the course of their lives. In the shadow of towering skyscrapers and amid whispers of scandal and ambition, the first chapter of their intertwined destinies was set to be written, a chapter defined by the tension between power and vulnerability, by the sacrifice of personal truth for the sake of an empire. This was not a romance born of passion, but a calculated move in a high-stakes game. A game where every decision was a gamble and the stakes were nothing less than the very essence of identity. And as Ethan's penthouse office grew silent once more, and Lily stepped out into the bustling streets of New York with a heavy heart and a resolute spirit. The fragile promise of a new beginning shimmered on the horizon, uncertain, dangerous, and utterly transformative. The morning after their fateful meeting, Manhattan awoke under a sky heavy with gray clouds. In his penthouse, Ethan sat at his sleek, custom-made desk, staring blankly at the digital clock ticking away moments he wished he could reclaim. The city below continued its relentless rhythm, but within his high-rise sanctuary, a storm of uncertainty and regret had taken hold. The board's ultimatum and the weight of his recent choices pressed down on him like a crushing burden. His marriage, this cold, calculated contract, had been forced upon him by circumstances he had never imagined. Yet, now that Lily Everett's signature was on the contract, his life was irrevocably changed. Across town, in a modest Brooklyn apartment that starkly contrasted with Ethan's world of polished luxury, Lily awoke to a restless dawn. The previous night's events played over in her mind like a dissonant melody. The contract she had signed, the cold professionalism of Ethan's demeanor, and the undeniable glimmer of vulnerability in his eyes all left her conflicted. She had always prided herself on her integrity and independence, qualities that had allowed her to climb from humble beginnings to become one of Sterling Financial's most promising analysts. Now, however, she was stepping into an arrangement that felt as precarious as it was promising, a union that was supposed to bring stability to a billionaire's crumbling empire, yet threatened to upend everything she had fought to build. At Carrington Tower that morning, Ethan prepared for the day's first major test, a high-stakes board meeting intended to address the mounting pressures from investors and rival corporations. The boardroom was a vast, imposing space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. As senior executives filed in, murmurs of concern rippled through the air. Rumors of internal instability and whispered accusations linking Ethan's personal life to corporate mismanagement had grown louder. The stakes were higher than ever. Ethan's heart pounded as he took his seat at the head of the long glass table. The documents spread before him detailed a crisis of confidence. The merger he had labored over for months was now on the verge of collapse, and James Hartford, Ethan's ruthless rival, was capitalizing on every opportunity to further destabilize Carrington Industries. With every passing minute, the pressure mounted. His phone vibrated relentlessly with messages from legal advisors and urgent calls from board. Amid the chaos, he could still recall Lily's steady gaze and the promise in her voice. Perhaps she was his only hope to regain control of not only his company, but also the image of strength and reliability he desperately needed to project. Meanwhile, Lily, now a reluctant Mrs. Carrington in the eyes of the public, was thrust into a corporate labyrinth she had never anticipated. In the sterile conference room at Carrington Tower, she sat beside Ethan, her eyes scanning spreadsheets and financial projections as she took in every detail. The atmosphere was electric, charged with tension and veiled hostility. Senior board members, led by the sharp-tongued Claudia Stevens, scrutinized every number, every clause, as if their very fortunes depended on unearthing a single mistake. Claudia's icy tone broke the silence. "Mr. Carrington, Mrs. Carrington, your recent strategic decisions have raised questions. Investors are nervous about the stability of the merger." Her gaze shifted toward Lily, a challenge in her eyes. "How can we be sure that this new arrangement isn't merely a desperate ploy to cover internal vulnerabilities?" Ethan leaned forward, his voice calm and measured. "Our union is a strategic necessity. It is designed to project stability and unity, and the comprehensive financial plan we've implemented will restore confidence in our leadership." He glanced briefly at Lily, who met his gaze with quiet determination. Though the marriage was nothing more than a contractual arrangement in public, in that moment, both felt the weight of the world pressing upon them, a shared burden that might either forge an unlikely alliance or tear them apart. As the meeting progressed, Lily found herself increasingly drawn into the minutiae of the company's struggles. The numbers on the screen were alarming. A decline in stock prices, mounting legal challenges and the relentless onslaught of negative press spearheaded by James Hartford. Yet beneath the surface of these cold, hard figures, Lily detected a pattern, a weakness in Hartford's campaign that could be exploited. If we can turn the narrative around by emphasizing transparency and our proactive measures, we might not only stabilize the merger, but also regain investor trust, she suggested cautiously. Her proposal, though delivered in a measured tone, sent a ripple of cautious approval around the table. Even Claudia, whose expression remained inscrutable, nodded slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the merit in her analysis. It was in that moment that Ethan's hardened facade softened imperceptibly. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that perhaps Lily's insight might be the key to not only saving his empire, but to redefining his own legacy. Outside the boardroom, in the quiet corridors of Carrington Tower, whispers of scandal and intrigue mingled with the hum of polished ambition. Ethan walked briskly, the weight of the day pressing upon him. In his private office, he stared at the skyline, each twinkling light a reminder of what he had achieved and what he risked losing. His mind raced with memories of his former life, a life filled with relentless pursuit of power, built on calculated risks and hard-fought victories. Now, the specter of personal betrayal, compounded by the board's relentless demands for stability, had forced him into a corner. The contract marriage, once a bitter concession, was slowly morphing into something else, a challenge that demanded he confront not only his corporate vulnerabilities, but the very essence of who he was. Back in Brooklyn, Lily returned to her modest apartment, the weight of the day still heavy on her shoulders. In the quiet solitude of her living room, she spread out the documents she had received at Carrington Tower and reread every clause, every fine print. The contract wasn't just a legal document. It was a symbol of a new chapter in her life, one that promised both opportunity and risk. The thought of being forever entwined with a man whose life was as enigmatic as it was ruthless stirred a cocktail of emotions in her. There was fear of losing herself in a world that valued superficial success over genuine connection, and a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, she could bring a sense of integrity and humanity into the cold corridors of power. The following morning, as the city stirred to life, Ethan and Lily found themselves caught in a relentless cycle of public appearances, board meetings, and strategic recalibrations. Every step they took together was scrutinized by the media, every gesture dissected by analysts. Yet, amid the calculated choreography of corporate life, small moments of genuine connection began to emerge. In the quiet moments between meetings, Ethan would catch Lily's gaze, a look that spoke of determination, intellect, and a resilience that both challenged and inspired him. And in turn, Lily began to see that beneath his polished exterior, Ethan was not just a ruthless businessman. He was a man grappling with the cost of his own ambitions, haunted by past betrayals and the loneliness of power. As investors' concerns gradually receded under a carefully crafted narrative of transparency and proactive measures, the immediate crisis at Carrington Industries was temporarily averted. But both Ethan and Lily knew that the challenges ahead were far from over. The board's demands, the relentless pressure from rival factions, and the ever-looming threat of further scandals all promised to test the fragile alliance they had forged. The storm of reckoning was just beginning, and the choices they made in the coming weeks would determine not only the fate of a multi-billion-dollar empire, but also the possibility of finding something real amid the cold calculus of business. In the midst of that storm, as Ethan prepared for yet another high-pressure meeting and Lily revised a financial strategy that might turn the tide, each of them silently vowed to confront the challenges head-on. For Ethan, it was a battle to preserve his legacy and perhaps to rediscover the humanity he had long buried under layers of ambition. For Lily, it was a chance to assert her worth in a world that valued image over substance, to prove that integrity could triumph over cynicism. And as the day wore on and the relentless pulse of Manhattan beat in the background, both knew that the journey ahead would be treacherous. But it was a journey they would now face together, bound by necessity, by strategy, and by the faint, yet undeniable, promise of redemption. The days following the high-stakes board meeting had grown increasingly relentless, each moment a struggle to maintain an image of control amidst the brewing corporate storm. In the sleek corridors of Carrington Industries, whispers of scandal and subtle rivalries intensified. Investors, still jittery from the merger's instability and Hartford's relentless attacks, demanded concrete proof that Ethan Carrington's leadership could withstand even the harshest scrutiny. The pressure was mounting, and every decision seemed to carry the weight of the entire empire. Ethan found himself at a crossroads. In his private office overlooking a city that never paused, he sat alone at his massive mahogany desk, the folder of confidential reports still open before him. The numbers were disheartening. A significant dip in stock prices, a growing list of legal challenges, and more damning evidence of internal mismanagement than he was willing to admit. Each buzz of his phone delivered another message of urgency from the board or his legal team, and the echo of James Hartford's calculated maneuvers haunted his every thought. For the first time, the ruthless image he had cultivated began to crack. His eyes, usually so steely and resolute, now betrayed a glimmer of uncertainty as he realized that his personal and professional lives were colliding in ways he could no longer ignore. Across town, Lily grappled with a similar storm on a much smaller scale. In the modest apartment she now called home, a far cry from the glittering world of high finance, Lily spent long hours poring over spreadsheets and strategic plans. Her mind was constantly torn between her ambition to prove herself in this unforgiving corporate arena and the heavy personal cost of stepping into Ethan's world. Every day, she reread the contract she had signed, its legal language a stark reminder of the life-altering decision she had made. Though her analytical mind appreciated the opportunity to shape the narrative, her heart trembled at the thought of being forever bound to a man whose past was marred by betrayal and whose reputation now teetered on the edge of collapse. Late one afternoon, as rain pounded against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Carrington Tower, Ethan was summoned to an emergency board meeting. The atmosphere in the boardroom was electric with tension. Senior executives and board members, their faces set in grim determination, gathered to discuss the latest wave of investor concerns and negative press. James Hartford's relentless campaign of undermining Ethan's credibility had reached a fever pitch. The room filled with murmurs of distrust and sharp criticisms. Claudia Stevens, one of the board's most formidable members, questioned Ethan with an icy precision. "Mr. Carrington, how do you intend to counter these damaging allegations? How can we be sure that this contract marriage isn't merely a facade masking deeper issues within our leadership?" Ethan's response was measured, his voice steady but laced with an edge of desperation. "Our union is part of a broader strategy to stabilize both the company and our public image. We have implemented rigorous financial controls and a comprehensive transparency initiative. I have full confidence that these measures will restore investor trust." His eyes, however, betrayed a fleeting moment of vulnerability as they flickered toward the empty seat beside him, where Lily sat, silent and poised, a quiet force of determination amid the chaos. After the meeting, the corridors buzzed with speculation. Some executives whispered that Ethan's confidence was faltering, while others lauded his strategic acumen in the face of adversity. Meanwhile, Lily's presence at the boardroom table had not gone unnoticed. A few senior members exchanged knowing glances, impressed by her incisive analysis and the calm authority with which she had presented her recommendations. Yet, amid the praise, there was an undercurrent of suspicion. Could someone from a humble background truly navigate the ruthless world of high finance? Was her appointment merely a calculated move by Ethan, or did she possess an unyielding strength that could alter the course of the company's future? That evening, as the city lights began to twinkle beneath a shroud of rain, Ethan retreated once again to his penthouse office. The solitude of the vast space did little to quiet the turmoil inside him. With the weight of the board's ultimatum and Hartford's machinations pressing down, he poured himself a second glass of scotch. The amber liquid swirled as if in silent protest against the encroaching darkness. He recalled the board's stern words and the uneasy glances of his colleagues. The merger, his prized achievement meant to secure Carrington Industries' future, was now under threat. And every public appearance, every carefully orchestrated event, added another layer to the growing pressure that made him question whether his empire was built on a foundation of true stability or fragile veneer. In a parallel struggle, Lily returned to her modest Brooklyn apartment that night, the echoes of the day's events reverberating in her thoughts. Sitting at her small kitchen table, she spread out a stack of financial reports and notes, the contract with Carrington Industries lying open like a silent ultimatum before her. Each clause, each fine print detail of the agreement, reminded her of the tremendous gamble she had taken, not only to secure her sister Mia's future and pay off mounting debts, but also to step into a world where personal integrity often clashed with ruthless ambition. Her mind raced with questions. How could she maintain her ethical standards in a realm where power was wielded like a weapon? Was it possible that this marriage, born out of necessity, might evolve into something more genuine, a partnership built on mutual respect and trust? The following morning, the storm outside had lessened, but the internal battles for both Ethan and Lily were far from over. At Carrington Tower, Ethan prepared for another day of public appearances and strategic meetings. As he adjusted his tie and reviewed his talking points, a sense of determination began to slowly overtake the lingering doubt. He reminded himself that he had built his empire from nothing, that every setback was merely another challenge to be conquered. Yet, deep down, he knew that the real test lay not in the numbers or in outmaneuvering rivals, but in the ability to remain true to himself, even when every calculated move seemed to demand a sacrifice of the heart. Meanwhile, Lily braced herself for the day ahead. With a deep breath, she reviewed the latest revisions to the financial strategy she had helped craft. The stakes were enormous, and every decision she made could alter not only the future of Carrington Industries, but also her own destiny. As she headed out into the bustling streets of Manhattan, the city greeted her with its signature blend of chaos and possibility. Each step she took felt like a defiant act, a quiet protest against the forces that sought to define her solely by her past. By midday, Ethan and Lily's paths converged once more in a high-profile investor luncheon, a critical public event meant to project confidence and unity. In the crowded, opulent dining hall, their eyes met briefly over the table as they exchanged determined smiles. The scrutiny of the press and the lingering suspicion of the board hung in the air like a challenge. In that fleeting moment, the personal and the professional collided. Ethan's hardened exterior softened imperceptibly at the sight of Lily's steady gaze, and she, in turn, recognized the silent plea for support behind his carefully constructed mask. As the luncheon progressed, whispers about their contract marriage began to circulate among investors and socialites alike. Every gesture, every word was dissected by onlookers eager for any sign of genuine connection, or the lack thereof. Yet, amid the relentless scrutiny, a quiet resilience emerged. Ethan, bolstered by Lily's unwavering presence, answered questions with a newfound clarity, his voice carrying the weight of both authority and a hint of something more personal. Lily contributed with precise, insightful remarks that underscored not just her analytical prowess, but also her commitment to the company's future. By the end of the luncheon, the immediate crisis had been defused, at least in the public eye. The board's concerns were temporarily pacified, and investor confidence, while still fragile, had begun to stabilize. But for Ethan and Lily, the day's events had only deepened the realization that the path ahead would be fraught with relentless challenges, both external and internal. The storm of corporate intrigue and personal betrayal was far from over, and the true test of their alliance was only just beginning. As the luncheon ended and the city resumed its ceaseless rhythm, Ethan returned to his penthouse with a heavy heart and a mind buzzing with plans for damage control. Lily, too, walked away with a sense of responsibility and a cautious hope. Both knew that their fates and the fate of Carrington Industries depended on every move they made in the coming days. And as they faced the uncertain horizon, the fragile alliance forged in the crucible of crisis began to hint at the possibility of something more than a mere business arrangement. It promised a journey into uncharted territory, where the true strength of an empire might one day be measured not just by wealth or power, but by the courage to be vulnerable, to trust, and ultimately to transform. The pressure continued to mount as the crisis deepened around Carrington Industries. In the days following the investor luncheon, Ethan found himself pulled into a relentless cycle of board meetings, media inquiries, and strategic recalibrations. Every morning, the towering glass walls of his penthouse office became a silent witness to the battles raging within him, a fierce internal struggle between the man he had built and the man he now feared he was becoming. That morning, Ethan awoke to an unsettling quiet. The usual hum of the city outside felt muted, as if even Manhattan sensed the shifting tide of his fortunes. He sat at his mahogany desk, a half-empty glass of scotch in hand, and stared at the confidential reports that outlined the latest wave of investor skepticism. The numbers were grim: a steady decline in stock prices, an increasing number of legal threats, and whispers that James Hartford was mounting another offensive. But what cut deeper than the financial forecasts was the knowledge that his personal life, this contract marriage with Lily Everett, had become a focal point for his critics. Every headline splashed the term transactional union, a phrase that mocked the very core of his carefully constructed persona. In the boardroom that afternoon, Ethan tried to mask his inner turmoil behind a veneer of unwavering confidence. The long, polished table and the panoramic view of the city provided a backdrop that should have bolstered his authority. Yet every glance from skeptical board members and every pointed question made his pulse race. Claudia Stevens, with her trademark icy precision, once again took the floor. "Mr. Carrington," she said, her tone measured but unyielding, "the public narrative now suggests that your personal decisions are undermining your leadership. How do you respond to those who claim that this marriage is merely a PR maneuver?" Ethan's gaze swept the room before settling on Lily, who sat composedly beside him. Her presence had become a silent anchor amidst the chaos. Taking a steadying breath, he answered, "Our marriage, as unconventional as it is, reflects a necessary step in stabilizing the company during these turbulent times. I stand by our decision because it is part of a larger strategy to secure the future of Carrington Industries." His voice was calm, but behind his words lay a storm of doubts he dared not reveal. After the meeting adjourned, the boardroom's tension lingered like a heavy fog. Ethan retreated to a quiet corner of the executive suite, where he found Lily reviewing a set of financial models on her tablet. She looked up as he approached, her eyes reflecting both determination and a trace of exhaustion. "Lily," he began quietly, "do you ever wonder how much of this," he gestured vaguely at the spread of reports and the buzzing of his phone, "is really under our control?" Lily paused, her fingers hovering over the screen. "I do," she admitted softly. "Every number we manipulate, every narrative we spin, feels like we're building on sand. But we have to try. We're in this together, Ethan. And if we can't hold the facade together for the board and our investors, we might as well start being honest with ourselves." Her words resonated more deeply than he expected. In that moment, Ethan saw in her not just a strategic partner, but a kindred spirit, a woman who had fought her way up from nothing and who valued integrity even in the cutthroat corridors of power. He felt a surge of conflicted emotion, a blend of gratitude and uncertainty. Later that day, as the office buzzed with whispered speculations and urgent phone calls, Ethan received a call from his legal advisor, Mark. The conversation was terse. "Ethan, Hartford's campaign is escalating. We've received a cease and desist letter regarding our merger documents, and there's talk of an investigation into internal irregularities. You need to act quickly." The words hit Ethan like a punch. The corporate world was tightening its grip, and his rivals were seizing every opportunity to exploit his vulnerabilities. With his heart pounding, he stepped out onto the balcony for a moment of solitude. The Manhattan skyline sprawled before him, a dazzling yet indifferent reminder of the empire he had built. As he gazed out at the city lights, his mind wandered back to the painful memories of his past, a childhood of scarcity in a cramped Brooklyn apartment, the relentless work ethic his parents instilled in him, and the bitter taste of betrayal that had driven him to pursue power at any cost. Now, the very foundation of that ambition was crumbling, and the personal sacrifices he had made to achieve success weighed on him like a millstone. Back in Brooklyn, Lily wrestled with her own internal battles. In the quiet of her modest apartment, she reviewed the contract one more time, her eyes scanning every clause, every stipulation that bound her to Ethan Carrington's world. The document was more than a legal agreement. It was a symbol of the new life she had chosen, a life where the stakes were astronomically high. Her thoughts drifted to her family, to her sister Mia, who had always believed in her strength, and to the promise she had made to herself, that she would never compromise her integrity for survival. As she sat at her small kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, Lily felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. The headlines, the rumors, the constant scrutiny, they were relentless, and they threatened to unmoor her from the values she held dear. But she also knew that this was her chance to change the narrative, to prove that honesty and resilience could triumph over even the most ruthless corporate machinations. Every challenge, every setback was a test of her character, and she was determined to pass with flying colors. The following evening, the tension reached a crescendo at a high-profile charity gala hosted by Carrington Industries. The event was meant to showcase stability and unity, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to reassure investors and silence critics. As Ethan and Lily made their entrance, the room fell into a hushed silence. All eyes turned to the enigmatic couple. Whispers of power couple and corporate rescue filled the air. Despite the lavish decor and the glamorous smiles of the attendees, Lily felt the pressure like a vice tightening around her heart. Ethan's presence was magnetic, yet there was an undeniable vulnerability in the way he glanced at her, a silent plea for support amid the orchestrated opulence. Throughout the evening, as they navigated the intricacies of small talk and diplomatic introductions, Lily's mind raced. Every interaction, every carefully chosen word felt like a performance. But beneath the veneer of rehearsed politeness, she sensed the cracks in their facade. Investors scrutinized their every move, and rival factions whispered about the authenticity of their union. Yet, in the midst of that relentless scrutiny, a subtle transformation was taking place. Ethan's guarded exterior began to soften in moments when no one was watching, when, over a quiet dinner or a whispered conversation in a secluded corner of the gala, he allowed himself to share a fragment of the pain he had hidden for so long. After the gala, as the city's neon glow faded into the early hours, Ethan and Lily retreated to a private lounge. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken words. Ethan, his eyes reflecting both determination and weariness, broke the silence. "Tonight, I saw a lot of doubt in the faces of our investors," he said quietly. "They question the strength of our alliance. And I wonder if we're prepared to face that storm." Lily's gaze met his, steady and unflinching. "Ethan, every alliance has its trials. We're not just here to play a role for the board. We're here because, despite everything, there's a chance for us to build something real. The truth is, our challenges might be the very thing that unites us." Her words carried a quiet conviction that struck him deep. In that moment, as the distant hum of the city underscored the fragility of their situation, Ethan felt a renewed resolve. The storm outside, Hartford's relentless tactics, the board's increasing demands, and the pervasive skepticism of the media could either tear them apart or force them to confront their own vulnerabilities. And for the first time, he realized that perhaps facing those vulnerabilities was the only path to true strength. Back at his penthouse later that night, Ethan sat alone, the weight of the day's events pressing upon him. The city continued its ceaseless rhythm, oblivious to the internal battles of man who had once been unbreakable. He reviewed the day's conversations, the lingering doubts of board members, and the subtle, yet powerful, connection he had felt with Lily. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. The very act of exposing his vulnerabilities might be the key to not only salvaging his empire, but also redeeming the man he had become. Meanwhile, in her Brooklyn apartment, Lily lay awake long after midnight. The gentle hum of the city outside was a distant lullaby as she wrestled with her own thoughts. The contract, the financial reports, and the public spectacle of the gala all weighed heavily on her mind. Yet, amid the swirling doubts and uncertainties, a spark of defiance glowed within her, a determination to prove that she could thrive in a world that prized ruthlessness over integrity. She vowed silently that she would not allow the storm to break her. Instead, she would harness its power to forge a future built on honesty and resilience. As dawn broke the next day, both Ethan and Lily rose to face a new chapter in their tumultuous journey, a day when every decision, every gesture would be scrutinized and judged by a world that demanded perfection. In the quiet before the storm, they found themselves united not only by contractual obligation, but by a shared understanding that the true test of their alliance lay in their willingness to confront the harsh truths of their past and the uncertain promise of the future. In the corridors of Carrington Industries and in the modest streets of Brooklyn, the battle lines were drawn. The storm of reckoning had arrived, and with it came the possibility of redemption, a chance to rebuild not just an empire, but the very essence of who they were. And as the day unfolded, with every heated board meeting and every whispered conversation in the dark, Ethan and Lily began to realize that sometimes the greatest strength lies in embracing the fragility of the human heart. The morning light broke gently over Manhattan as if heralding a fresh start for a city that never ceased its relentless rhythm. In the wake of countless board meetings, media storms, and whispered allegations, Ethan and Lily found themselves standing on the precipice of transformation, both personally and professionally. Their contract marriage, once conceived as a cold business arrangement to salvage a crumbling empire, had evolved into a crucible of vulnerability and unexpected hope. Ethan woke in his penthouse with a heavy heart, yet an unfamiliar clarity. The endless cycle of crisis management and relentless investor scrutiny had forced him to confront not only the weaknesses in Carrington Industries, but the emptiness in his own soul. As he sipped his morning scotch by the vast window overlooking the city, he recalled the painful lessons of the past months, the sting of public betrayal, the pressure from a board that demanded perfection, and the icy distance that his own ambition had carved between him and the human connections he so desperately needed. In those quiet moments, Ethan realized that true strength was not measured solely by power or wealth. It was forged in the fire of genuine vulnerability and the willingness to change. Across town, in her modest Brooklyn apartment, Lily stirred from a fitful sleep. The night had been long, filled with restless thoughts about the future and the daunting task of merging her own ethics with the high-stakes demands of Ethan's world. Yet, as she looked out her window at the soft glow of early dawn, she felt a surge of resolve. Every challenge she had faced, every scrutinizing glance from board members, every piercing question from the media, had taught her that her strength came not just from her sharp mind, but from her unyielding integrity. She vowed that she would no longer allow fear or external pressures to dictate her future. Her decision to step into this strange alliance had not been made lightly, and now, with every beat of her determined heart, she was ready to carve out her own identity. Later that day, at a pivotal investor meeting meant to restore confidence in Carrington Industries, Ethan and Lily appeared side by side. The boardroom, with its towering glass walls and panoramic view of the city, was filled with the murmurs of skeptics and cautious optimists alike. As Ethan spoke, his voice carried a tempered mix of authority and newfound humility. "Our challenges are many," he declared, "but every trial is an opportunity for transformation. We are committed to transparency, ethical practices, and, above all, to building a legacy that reflects not just our success in business, but our willingness to learn from our mistakes." Lily then added, her tone clear and resolute. Integrity and resilience are our guiding principles. We will navigate these turbulent times together, and we will emerge stronger and more united. In that moment, the alliance between them transcended its contractual origins. Investors who had once questioned the authenticity of their union began to see something more. Two people who were willing to be vulnerable, to acknowledge their faults, and to fight not just for profits, but for a vision of a better, more responsible future. The stock prices, once volatile and unpredictable, started to stabilize as the board's confidence grew. Rival factions, led by the cunning strategies of James Hartford, found themselves increasingly on the defensive against a united front that was both shrewd and remarkably human. After the meeting, as the room slowly emptied and the hum of the city seeped back into the background, Ethan and Lily retreated to a quiet lounge overlooking the skyline. The soft glow of twilight bathed the city in gentle hues, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause in anticipation of what was to come. Ethan turned to Lily, his eyes no longer the steely gray of ruthless ambition, but softened by the weight of shared burdens. "Lily, I've spent so many years believing that control was the only path to success," he confessed quietly. "But now I see that real strength comes from accepting our vulnerabilities, and in that acceptance, we can truly begin to heal." Lily reached out, taking his hand firmly in hers. "We're not defined by our mistakes, Ethan," she replied, her voice imbued with a calm determination. "We're defined by the choices we make after falling. Today, we choose to rebuild, not just an empire, but a future based on honesty, trust, and the courage to be ourselves." As the evening deepened and the city lights shimmered like distant stars, a gentle transformation took hold. Their public personas, once rigid and unyielding, began to merge with something profoundly personal. For the first time, the contract marriage was not just a business strategy, but a promise that both Ethan and Lily would support one another, learn from one another, and, most importantly, embrace the inherent risks of being human. This story is a testament to the fact that even the most calculated lives, built on power and ambition, are vulnerable to the forces of change. It reminds us that true strength does not come from an unyielding facade, but from the courage to confront our flaws, to accept help, and to evolve. Ethan and Lily's journey teaches us that when we open ourselves up to vulnerability, we not only reveal our human side, but also discover the power of trust and connection. In a world where success is often measured by material gain and control, their story challenges us to rethink what it means to be truly successful. It urges us to recognize that redemption and renewal are possible even in the face of overwhelming adversity. By choosing honesty over deception and empathy over isolation, we can transform our greatest challenges into opportunities for growth. Let this narrative inspire us to embrace our imperfections, to learn from our failures, and to find strength in our shared humanity. Remember, every setback holds the promise of a new beginning, and every fracture in our armor is a chance to rebuild stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than before. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story and believe in the power of kindness and transformation, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. Your support means the world to us and helps us continue to bring you inspiring stories that remind us all of the strength found in vulnerability and genuine connection. Thanks again for being part of our journey on kindness in real life.